have a real story of adventure or anything, apart with what I've done from everyone here, that is. My ability, I suppose, is something I've always had, though growing up I never knew it for what it was, and of course I also assumed everyone else had the same feelings when they handled items, but they just didn't talk about it, so neither did I. Well, I was working as a server in a tavern when I was young. I would deliver food to the tables, take away empty plates and mugs, and then mark the pints and quarts on the board. And most of the objects I would handle, mugs, plates, spoons, coinage, and the like, would all be common things held by many people. So while there was a broad call from many of the voices the items held, it would be like a crowd of people, each shouting something different from very far away. So my young mind didn't notice anything from these items. Then, one patron, wanting to provide some entertainment at my expense, took his knife and with all his might rammed its tip into the wooden table. Then he looked at me and took out some hack silver and said, "This is for you, little girl, if you can pull the knife out from the table." Well, I didn't have much of mind to try to pull the knife free, but he was offering silver. Well, I couldn't ignore that. So I steeled myself up and wrapped my fingers around the hilt of the knife and gripped it tight. I jerked back and pulled with all my might, but the knife wouldn't budge. But the more I pulled with my hand, the more I concentrated upon the knife, the clearer its voice became to me. Well, I knew soon enough this knife was made by our local blacksmith. It had only one known owner, and it had been used for whittling and spreading butter and cutting meat. Then, I could also feel that just last night it had been used to stab someone. I felt the knife as it entered someone's underbelly, as if I myself was holding it. As I felt the shock of this, I screeched and let go of the knife. There was loud laughter from around the table, but I just stood there and looked wide-eyed at the owner of the knife. And whether it was from his guilt or the memory of the deed, when he looked into my eyes, he guessed that I knew. That somehow I knew what he had done, and to whom, and the circumstances and the consequences. Of course, I didn't know all this, but to his mind, I knew. I could tell from his eyes. And when he grabbed my arm, all his guilt and all the details of the deed flooded my mind. I screamed and ran away from the table and from the man and from the tavern. That night I hid out in the wood, confused and alone. I could not tell the difference between what I had felt as actual events and what was just my fear. The knife, the murder, the man, the look in his eye that he knew. His guilt, his contemplating murdering me to cover up his deed. Did it matter which was real and which was fear? Well, I never went back after that. I stopped going anywhere that there were lots of people. They were so overwhelming, and I was afraid. I found some work with an old lady in her hermitage. She couldn't bend over to tender herbs and roots anymore. I learned a lot from her, and no one tried to murder me after that.
You have been listening to Fireside Stories from the Dungeons & Damsels series. Voice talent for the character Skeyo was performed by Danny Baldwin. Script by David Ian. Sound engineering by Dino D'Elfwell. With music by Ron Perovich. Dungeons & Damsels is a sword and sorcery medieval fantasy series produced by Unchained Productions.